Is it Jules?
Uh-huh.
Hey, welcome.
Hi.
Oh, how's it going, man?
Good, how you doing?
Fine.
Pretty good. I called in maybe a few years ago. I had just, I guess, become a conspiracy theorist or whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
With regards to 9/11 or whatever. And at the time,
you mean there's a conspiracy about 9/11 too? Have you heard about that?
Only every week.
Yeah, I'm sure y'all are familiar with this. But anyway, at the time, y'all were like, well, this show is about, it was, atheism. We're not going to get into politics. And I was like, that's cool, whatever. Thanks for taking my call.
Okay.
But, it just seems like a lot of times conspiracy theory is a label put on people who interpret information differently from the way that other people might. For example,
And by the way, crazy is a label we put on people who interpret reality different than other people.
Oh, yeah, that's fair enough, most people I know you don't know me, but they consider me a fairly well-adjusted person. It's like when you have conspiracy theories where it's one event perhaps, or one, pivotal event where people might look at it and interpret differently. All of a sudden, how does that affect their entire, I guess, psychology? I mean, most people think I'm rational about everything else, then they disagree with me on 9/11. I guess on that issue, I tend to lose.
I know plenty of people who I would consider rational about all kinds of things, and yet they're religious, which I consider to be completely irrational.
Would you say they're all nuts?
No, and I wouldn't say that conspiracy theory believers are nuts. I mean, some are probably, but I think that an easier explanation is that conspiracy theories are seductive. They give the believer a sense that they alone have a handle on what's going on. They have this incredibly vast answer, this understanding that they're tapped into something that nobody else knows, and that everybody else is a fool, and that kind of feels good, I think.
Well, it's incredibly powerful because one of the things that drives us is this overwhelming desire to gain understanding, to come to grips with what's actually going on, to not be surrounded by mysteries. And this applies to where did everything come from, where did we come from, what is consciousness, blah, blah, blah. And when we find something like, for example, the Kennedy assassination or 9/11, and there are unanswered questions, there are explanations that are not completely satisfying, and so we look and we find this compelling and interesting story that's made up from bits and pieces of information that appears to give a much better answer, and if we chuck critical thinking out the window, we can not only accept that answer, but be satisfied that we've accepted the correct answer.
Well, earlier y'all made the statement that conspiracy theorists, they don't present evidence of their own. They just simply point out that, perhaps the government or whoever maybe is withholding evidence or whatever. The simple fact of the matter is, like, for example, people say there was no plane that hit the Pentagon or whatever.
Do you say that?
Do I? I have seen no evidence that there was. I mean, there's a hole.
You see no evidence that there was a plane at all?
Well, there's no plane
the
part.
Pentagon.
There's no engine or wings or evidence to any of those things.
So the big hole in the engine that they pulled out of there, and the reporter who was standing there, who's gone on repeatedly to say, yes, I saw it and it was a plane.
Right. But the thing is, the government could put all that to rest. There's got to be hundreds of cameras that caught the impact. I mean, it's the Pentagon. It's secure. And honestly, releasing a couple of them, what harm would that do? That wouldn't hurt our national security.
Okay, but what you're doing is using an absence of evidence to support your suspicion. You don't have any evidence. You don't have any evidence to contradict the official story. You're just saying there must be evidence out there that they're not releasing, and since I haven't seen it, I'm not going to accept their story.
Well, I'm not saying there must. I mean, you
just said there must. You just said there must be hundreds of cameras.
Okay, well, you don't think that there are more than one?
I think there were probably several.
But well, why wouldn't they just? I mean, if these conspiracy theories are, why don't they just blow them out the water and put an end to it?
Because they're irrelevant, and all of the peer-reviewed science goes to refute them. There's no peer-reviewed science.
I wouldn't necessarily say that.
Well, I know you wouldn't.
Another thing that I guess that.
I'm just saying, I think there's a misconception that these conspiracy theories are taken seriously and that there's something that the government needs to squelch at this point.
Have you seen the History Channel? They have a special debunking 9/11 conspiracies.
Yes.
And yeah, and that one's great. They go through the conspiracies and they get an expert on to say, listen, conspiracy theorists say when there's smoke there's a fire, but come on, that's absurd. All the refutation they do is aimed at, I guess, the psychological condition of conspiracy theories as opposed to presenting.
Right, but I mean, let me ask you this. This was produced by the Discovery Channel and not the government. So the question is, are the people who work at the Discovery Channel part of the conspiracy, or are they being paid to perpetuate the conspiracy?
They might actually genuinely believe that conspiracy theorists are nuts. I mean, but they present.
Well,
there's no refuting something means.
No. Stop. Because here's where you've gone way wrong, and you've done it twice now. You're saying that there's a responsibility to refute your conspiracy claim, and the fact that they haven't done it, they haven't completely refuted the story that you believe, is a problem. No, sorry, that's not the way science and investigation works. If you have a claim, you have to present evidence that supports your claim. Actual evidence that supports your claim, not the absence of evidence and not somebody else's, or a flaw or something wrong in somebody else's. And you don't get to just present your claim and say, this stands until you can refute me. That's not the way knowledge works.
I understand what you're saying. I guess what I'm saying is that the government's story never made a lot of sense to me. They never really did.
Why do you call it the government story?
The story that they told, that they presented, because they did have an obligation.
It's not just the government story, it's also the Discovery Channel story.
It's also the story of every peer-reviewed scientific study on the events.
It's also the story of the people who were families of the people on the planes. It's
were paid off.
They were all paid off.
Prove that. That's a claim by you that is refuting actual evidence in stand, and you're making this claim.
Let me put a hypothetical.
The families who accepted the government settlement made an agreement to never sue for any reason. I mean, that was part of the.
Let me put a hypothetical to you for a second. Your son has just been killed, and the government contacts you and says, yeah, your suspicions are true, but we're going to pay you a lot of money never to talk about it. How much money would that take?
No, I'm not saying that the government admitted that there's suspicion. I'm saying the government, for everyone, there were a few people who didn't take the payoff, but the ones that, but anyway, I'm sorry, I shouldn't call it a payoff, who accepted the settlement, the wrongful death or whatever, to agree not to sue the government. But
okay, how much money do you have to receive if you're in that position to say, yeah, okay, I'm never going to talk about this?
Now, besides that, you just said that they accepted a wrongful death settlement and agreed not to sue the government. So what? That's standard. That doesn't
that's not proof of a conspiracy.
But that doesn't stop them from
No,
going
it's
to the
not
press.
proof of a conspiracy. That happens all the time for everything.
You accept. Like
Stop. You accept a settlement in lieu of agreeing not to sue them. That's what the settlement is. It has nothing to do with conspiracy. If you slip and fall at a supermarket and they offer you a settlement, it's a settlement paying you, compensating you for the damage, and you agree not to sue them.